I'll never forget my first road trip in Poland. For one, I was quite proud to be driving on Polish roads. But the other thing that made a huge impression on me were the radio stations. They were just filled with 1980s classics. This was the beginning of the 2000s, so I guess that's changed a lot. Polish radio has rap, a bunch of corporate garbage that I don't like listening to, but all the same, I maintain a kind of fascination and I listen from time to time. And as you can see here in the car, we've got quite a selection. So Polskie Radio is actually what I really enjoy. And you would never believe that a government radio station like this, which formed many, many years ago, was also responsible for building the tallest man-made object on Earth. It's collapsed, and on today's episode of Kult America, we are going to hit the road and go see what remains of that tower, as well as discover the history of Polish radio. So first up, we are headed to the location of Poland's very first mass radio broadcast. The first radio transmission to take place in Poland actually occurred in this very unassuming building located in Mokotów. As the journalist called out, "Halo, halo, Polskie Radio Warszawa, fale 480, a christening occurred and Polish radio began. And with ample desire from the public, a transmitter tower needed to be built. On the 18th of April 1926, the first Polish broadcasting channel appeared. It was simply called Warszawa, or in English, Warsaw. Now, I should mention that there were some earlier attempts at broadcast in Poland, such as a small local radio in Krakow, but these attempts never really brought any success. As soon as 1923, the first radio stations were set up in Poland. Routine transmissions began at Fort Mokotowski, which was a major success. Now look at this. On our way to the very first transmission tower, we have Polish radio right here in front of us. And believe it or not, I actually worked there for 2 years. I had a morning show, and it was a great experience, but it was brutal waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work. So yeah, memory lane time. This picture can offer us some pretty important details to finding out exactly where the tower was. It looks absolutely different today. The mound there is covered with trees. Obviously, instead of bombed out old cars and stuff, you've got trendy restaurants, but the tall tale sign, in my opinion, is this arcade that was totally destroyed during the war. It's been renovated, but it's still pretty messed up. So I'm sure we're in the right place. So it looks like just at the end of this fortress, there's a mound, and right after that mound is where the first transmitting tower stood. So I'm losing my confidence that we'll find any remnants, but it's good to have a look. It's so hard to distinguish what belongs to what. You know, this place has been just regurgitated through various points of history, but here are certainly some interesting anchorages. Plus there's a building over there that could very well have been a transmitter tower, kind of headquarters. If I just look at the picture here, can't tell if it had cables supporting it or not, you know? But most of those towers do have cables. Oh yeah, no, it did. So actually, it would seem that there were 2 towers here at some point. I could be wrong, but I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that if there was some kind of cable anchorage, this may have very well belonged to that part of the mission. You know, I guess people in the comments are going to have to let us know if this is what we're looking for or not. Very, very difficult to tell, seeing as I'm no expert on radio, but it certainly looks like the base of a tower to me. Poland was officially on the broadcasting map of Europe. At that time, Polish radio used 393-foot or 120-meter transmitting dishes, spreading between 246 feet or 75-meter tall poles. The transmitter could reach up to 56 miles or 90 kilometers and added around 50,000 listeners to a given broadcast. And just 1 year later, Radio Krakow started broadcasting the famous St. Mary's trumpet call beyond its legendary market square, complete with the charismatic pause close to the end. By 1928, this trumpet call became transmitted nationwide. Naturally, after the success of Warsaw and then Krakow, Poznan, Katowice, and Vilnius also got their own stations. So at this point, the majority of Polish people had access to the radio. This pushed the government to start producing cheaper, more affordable, and comfortable radio receivers, called dedophones. The colossal marketing campaign for everyone in Poland to have a dedophone certainly brought results, and interestingly, this campaign was the most extensive campaign of its type in the whole world. The combination of the dedophone and the new big transmitter in Warsaw resulted in a nationwide radio network, and until World War II, 1 million citizens in Poland had their own radio.
Halo, halo, czy nas słyszycie? To nasz ostatni komunikat. Dziś oddziały niemieckie wkroczyły do Warszawy. Braterskie pozdrowienie przesyłamy żołnierzom polskim walczącym na Helu i wszystkim walczącym gdziekolwiek się jeszcze znajdują. Jeszcze Polska nie zginęła. Niech żyje Polska!
Unfortunately for the radio business, war happened, and German Nazis confiscated all receivers and banned them, and those found in possession of a radio could face the death penalty. For 5 years, radios went silent in Poland until 1944, when the audition was broadcast by the Polish National Army, otherwise known as the Underground State and Resistance in Poland, during World War II. After the war, radio was supervised by the communist government. They censored it heavily and sometimes used it as a propaganda tool, until the 3rd of May 1952, when the first transmission of Wolna Europa, or Free Europe, started from Munich.
Tu rozgłośnia Polska, Radia Wolna Europa. Obecnie przypominamy Państwu, że można nas słuchać na fali średniej 417 metrów oraz na falach krótkich w pasmach 13, 16, 19.
This radio provided resistance against communist propaganda, bringing forbidden news and music to the other side of the Iron Curtain.
Basista Plaster wraz z Bohunem napisali list do Wolnej Europy z prośbą o nadawanie utworów w ogóle nowej fali. Wolna Europa nadała pierwszą audycję, dedykując ją dla słuchaczy z Bieszczad.
Back in those times, Radio Channel 1 was the most popular broadcast in Poland. After all, it was a descendant of Radio Warszawa and Poland's oldest broadcaster. The channel primarily offered sports transmissions and Polish music to the public. Since 1973, the first channel has transmitted its broadcast around the clock, and for that reason, they needed a new and powerful transmitter, and this is where the story of Warsaw's gigantic radio mast begins. Quick detour in Socash to check out this rather incredible and unexpected train museum. To strengthen its signal, the first channel ordered the construction of a 2,120-foot radio mast. This tower's signal was so strong that it could reach as far away as Kazakhstan to the east, Iran to the south, and the United States to the west, using AM wavelengths, and this tower was an absolute engineering achievement for its time, as this was the tallest structure ever built by man, a record this mast held until 2008, when the Burj Khalifa was completed. This marvel was crafted by the engineer Jan Polak, who struggled with the construction for many months due to bad weather. The tower was constructed on a triangle base with each side having 16 feet in length. Segments were divided into 86 sections, each 25 feet tall, all made of thick steel bars. Because of the tower's size, it was secured by 15 steel lines so that it wouldn't tilt or sway with the wind. Only one elevator connected the top from the bottom, and the ride took about 30 minutes. Perhaps one of the most odd curiosities of this whole construction process was that the engineer Jan Polak didn't even realize that he had designed and was building the tallest man-made object on Earth. And here we are. Beyond this fence, up that road, once stood the tallest structure known to man. Unfortunately, the entire terrain is private property. If you think about the world's tallest structures, man-made structures anyhow, they're always coated in an allure of luxury. You know, people are making a statement with these structures. But if you look here, it says a lot about communism. You've got beaten up old fence, half-assed road, and yet this once contained the largest man-made object on Earth. I think that contrast in and of itself made this trip worth the while. To some extent, citizens were correct. The enormous tower was cursed, but radiation was not the issue. Its enormous size, combined with the fact that the communist government didn't exactly maintain and repair things correctly, meant that the tower existed under undue stress. After the government changed, a major renovation was scheduled. They wanted to make the mast a reason for Poland to be proud of. After all, it was already one of the country's few internationally recognized engineering successes. So on August the 8th, 1991, work began, and the work started by changing the steel lines that held this titan down. And here begins the tower's downfall. Literally. During the renovations, one line slipped and the other broke under tension, and so the mast fell down. One simple renovation error cost Poland the tallest structure on Earth. This whole catastrophe took only a few seconds, and fortunately, no one was injured. Well, perhaps aside from the lead of the conservation team, who was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison for causing the collapse. Fortunate for him, the sentence was shortened to 2 years and then ultimately suspended, which is probably a good thing because the truth of the matter is that the sole reason for this collapse was 17 years of poor maintenance. Cables were reported to be old and in dire need of replacement as far back as 1987. In fact, the top of the tower already deviated a few feet from where it was actually supposed to be. So we have decided to do a little off-roading here in the hopes that we can find a nice perspective of the former site of the Warsaw Radio Mast. I don't think this road's been worked on since the times of the Warsaw Radio Mast, quite honestly. But I can remember when a lot of the roads in Poland were pretty much exactly like this, just to try and find a foundation, you know, on the ground, when there's plenty of pictures of it online. Oh. All right, check it out. Here you can see an old cement fence and one of the lonesome towers. I'm not sure if that was an anchor point for the Warsaw Radio Mast or not. You can let me know in the comment sections below. But it's rusted out and very old looking. This is really something, and I regret that we cannot go inside, but the old barbed wire worn down, and the way that this tower is just kind of keeled over. It's far more interesting than I actually imagined it. I was just hoping for some cement blocks on the ground. Well, this is certainly something that you do not see every day. Not only is it keeled over from decay, but it seems that a tree has grown up around it in the time that it's fallen down. Just a fragment of urban decay here, but you know, from that era, it's really eerie. This morning when I set out to discover the relics of the world's tallest man-made object, I knew where I was going, I researched it, but standing here on this neglected road in a rather forgotten field makes me feel a conflicting emotion. On one hand, it's incredible what happened here, but perhaps what is more incredible is the fact that this tower was always something of an understatement. It was built as a utility. It was not celebrated for its heights. And here it fell, and now it's forgotten.